Okay, this is the exciting part and the easy part. This is the part that I love. This is the part that I'm really passionate about. And that's making sure that all you people today, when you walk out of here today, that you walk away with at least 2 things that you didn't know before. Okay? If you walk away with 2 things today, then I've succeeded in what I've set out to do. I said in the keynote address that most businesses would only be using 60% of the software, and that was probably an exaggeration. I reckon most businesses only use about 40% of the software, and I can say that quite confidently because I do get the opportunity to go out and visit clients still even today. I wouldn't be able to do my job today if I didn't have the ability to be able to do that, because I wouldn't know the pain that you guys felt. So today it really is about identifying. If it's more than 2, that's even better. But if you can walk away with 2 things that you know you can get back to the office tomorrow morning and you can turn on and you can start using, that's the aim of today. Okay, you do have some notes in front of you that we asked you to print out. If you've come in late and you haven't got any, just put your hand up. Ratishka's got some over there we can hand out. I don't want you to get too bogged down with these notes, okay, and taking truckloads of notes, because at the end of the session when you fill the survey out, you actually will get full detailed notes on all the sessions that we do today. So the first session that we're doing this morning is we're going back to basics. We're going back to the setups and then looking at some of the master file information. Well, in this booklet here is every single field in the setups, in the options, and also on the master file information for customers, products and suppliers, okay, and the general ledger I think we've got as well. So don't get too bogged down with what you need to write, because then I feel you miss out on the next thing that we're talking about. Now, one of the other things I want to point out to you is today we will be using BI. I want you to see BI, okay? I want you, if you're not using it already, I want you to be able to experience what those people that are using BI are experiencing. So that means that some of the information, some of the things that you see if you're still using accounts are not valid for you. And I will try and highlight those things. I'll try and point out the differences, okay, as we go through them. The first thing that I want to say to you is these manuals that you have, if you're using BI, you actually have the ability off our online help tab. If I choose the online help, I probably need to refresh that page. Help Centre, sorry, I just need to refresh the page because I've had the internet going for a while. I should have checked that. Okay, has someone plugged that out for me? No? Okay, what I'll do is I will come back to that. I'll check the internet because the internet has dropped out. My Wi-Fi has dropped out. So I will put that back on and I will show you. I'll come back to the Help Centre, which is really important because the actual Help Centre does have some of these manuals, not all of them, actually available to you in that help section so that you can actually go and print them all out yourself, along with a whole lot of other documentation as well. So that was what I want to highlight. So I'll just get the internet, my little internet connector back on, and I will show you that before the end of today, okay? All right, so that's the first thing. Those of you that are using accounts that aren't using BI, what we will do is at the end of the session, we will email you a link. And that link will be the ability for you to be able to also download all this other information, the documentation that's available. Okay, so if you're not on BI, it doesn't matter. You'll still get the link to be able to do that. Alrighty, so let's get stuck into it. So why am I choosing the options first? Like, why did we say that we wanted to look at the options? The reason for this is in the sprint sessions that we did at the end of the year, a lot of questions that came up during those sessions actually highlighted that people weren't aware that we'd added new things into the system where you could turn them on and turn them off yourself. Okay, so when you go in and you set the system up, if you're setting the system up from scratch, that's the first thing that you go into is all the options. So when we add a new feature to the system, that feature you might not want. So in the options, we give you the ability to be able to turn it on or turn it off, as opposed to us determining whether you're going to have it or not. So I want to go back to the options and go through each of those fields, because you will, I guarantee you, there'll be 1 or 2 fields in there that you didn't even know existed. When was the last time? Has anybody been into the options within the last month? 1? Yes? One? Only one? Two people? That's it. Okay. So every time we release a new version of the software or we do an update, I always say to people, this is really the first place, to my old clients, when I had my business, this is the place that I would go to first, straight after I finish reading the release notes. So we're going to look at some of those. I'm not going to go through every single field, because obviously there are so many of them, but I want to highlight the main ones. So the first lot of options we're going to go in and have a look at are the customer options. So under customers, what you will find here is the new one, which is the payment terms. Now, most businesses will have set these terms up here, okay? And those terms are on the customer master file, and those terms have been there forever. So all that's saying is our customers either pay us COD, 14 days, 21 days, or their direct debit, okay? But we're not actually specifying any dates that invoices are due or anything like that, okay? So that's just the old way of doing it. So down here now, you've got the due date options. So what you're doing here is you're actually setting up the default for your customers of when their invoices are going to be due. So the payment terms might be the number of days, set the day of the next month, okay, and you specify what those are. So here I can say that I'm setting the number of days from invoice date that the invoice is due, and that's 21 days. So what I've done here is I'm saying that's my default. So when I come and add any customers, that's the default that's going to be on their master file. Okay? If I need to change them, I can change them. So on the master file, you will also get this option with these drop downs where you can go and change them. So that basically means that you can have different customers paying you at different times. So those of you that do date-based over period-based, it again enables you to be able to have the payments within that as well. Okay. Now the general ledger postings, I'm not even going to talk about that, because most of you would be using the general ledger and you would be uploading all of your sub-ledgers, being your debtors, your creditors, and your suppliers, your stock, up into the general ledger. So that's where you turn that on if you want that postings on or off. Now most of this information that you see here, this master file information, this actually applies to not just customers but products as well, suppliers as well. So we're just going to talk a little bit about this to start with. The first thing is your access to the software. Within Attaché you have the ability to set up your password levels, 1 being the highest, 9 being the lowest. That's the first thing that you do. Okay? And we'll go through the user preferences and I'll show you where that's set up. So the first thing you would do is look at your staff, and this is something that I encourage people to look at on a regular basis. I go into businesses and there's 3 people there and they all use the same logon and the same password. And you go, well, what's the point of having them in there? Yeah? So it's really good to review these things every now and again. So the first thing we're looking at is that password level. So 1 to 9. So you look at your staff and then you work out what levels you actually want them to have based on what they can access within the system. So for example, here we have the ability to be able to edit notes in inquiry mode. So if I've set that password level as 9, that means everybody would be able to do that. Now that's an added feature, because in Attaché accounts, if you go in, you're talking to a customer and you want to add some notes, you're in a customer inquiry and you're talking to them about the invoices that are outstanding, and now you want to go in and add a note. Well, you couldn't do it from inquiry. You'd have to go into maintain. Well, now you have the ability to be able to add a note when you're doing an inquiry. But you might not want all staff to be able to do that. You might want certain particular staff members, you may only want them to inquire. You don't want them to go in and actually make any changes. So if that was the case, you might set the middle as, the staff member who has a level 4 or above can have access to inquiry on notes and make changes, but anyone who's got a 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9, you don't. So if that was the case, I would come in here under inquiry and I would actually make that a 4. So 4, 3, 2, 1 would be able to make notes under inquiry. The others will not be able to do that. Okay? So again, I'm saying this because people weren't aware that you could even go in and change the notes from inquiry mode. The default bank account in the general, the cost inquiry, I'll talk about that in products. The default bank accounts, I actually did have a client who asked me at the end of year when Attaché was going to introduce the ability for them to be able to have multiple bank accounts, so that they had their local creditors, their local debtors that were paying into one bank account, and they had overseas debtors and they wanted them paying into a separate bank account. That functionality's been in Attaché for years. So this is where you come in and you can set up the multiple bank accounts, and then you can set that default bank account up. You set the default bank account up, and then that can be accessed from the customer's master file. The general ledger sets I'm not going to talk about too much at the moment, because we are actually going to go into the general ledger sets in a little bit more detail in one of the sessions this afternoon. So now if I go to the other options, on the other options here we're looking at the ability for your aging bands if you're using period-based, or sorry, if you're using date-based accounting, what you want your aging bands to be. And then over here we have the ability to be able to print the next receipt. Did you realise that you can actually print receipts, customer receipts, out of Attaché? So if a customer comes in and it's a cash customer, they make a payment, you put the payment line in on the invoice, you can actually print a receipt as well. So that receipt can be printed at the time of entering in the transaction, or you can actually come into reports, customers, and under documents here, you can see you can print receipts. Okay, so and again, another field that was added. Then we've got the customer payment types, the ability to be able to consolidate payment types for your banking. Okay, so if you've got, I don't know how many businesses still pay checks. I know that there are still some out there that do it, but do you want to consolidate your checks and your cash? You're going down to the bank, you want that as one lot when it gets processed to the bank. The other one is the custom fields. And the custom fields, you have 15 custom fields on the customers, the products, and the suppliers. Now, these fields can be used for anything. Okay, so here the example that I've got here is that it's contract details, when was the last premium, when's the renewal date, these people are on a premium service, and then there's a number field there as well, and that might be the contract number that you put in there. So on every customer's master file, you can specify those details. Does that make sense? So you may also have customers that have licenses that they need to renew, not necessarily permits, but licenses. So that could be another one of the fields that you set up in here. So on products, it might be the last time you had a price increase on the particular product. So you've got the product in there. Was there a price increase? What was the last price? What date did it increase? That sort of information. So depending on the type of industry that you're in and the business that you're in, you can describe those and set those up for yourselves. Okay? All right, so that's looking at the actual customer options. If we now accept those, and we will go and have a look now at the invoicing options. Just making sure that I cover everything we need. Okay, so in the invoicing options, a couple of things that I want to highlight here. The credit limit. So some businesses do set up credit limit warnings, okay? But the other thing that they want to be able to do is have a password set up so that if a customer is over the credit limit, I don't want the operator to then go in and enter in an invoice. So you know at the checkout sometimes if you go and return some goods, the operator will put all the information in and then she has to buzz for the supervisor and the supervisor comes over and goes tick, 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 tick and puts in their password. Well, this is the same thing. So if you want to be able to really manage those customers that are over their credit limit, you could come in here and say yes, and you put a password in here so that if a customer is over their credit limit, they need to get to the supervisor or to yourself to actually put that password in there to enable them to do the invoice or the order even. The other one is using selected screen transactions. Okay, so we have the ability to be able to maintain different screen layouts for different operators. So basically every single operator that enters in an order or an invoice could have a different screen. And the reason for that is the sales manager, for example, may want to have the gross profit on the screen when an order's being entered in, so they can see how much play they've got when they're entering in a product, right? And there is a a seafood manufacturer, Brendan Page, one of our consultants in Queensland, actually introduced that for a seafood distributor in Brisbane, and they actually increased their sales by something like $300,000 within a 3-month period, because the margins on them are so small. So just the ability to be able to do that. But you may not want every operator to see the GP percentages. So what we do is we can put in a password, because there's a function key which I will show you as we move through today, when we go through the screen setups, where you can actually change the screen layouts. Well, you might not want somebody to be able to go in and have the screen layout that shows the gross profit or the cost of the particular product that you're selling. Okay, so that's another field that's been introduced. The other one is retaining the discount, top right-hand corner. We have clients that will ring us to say that when they've entered in an invoice or an order for a customer, they've entered in the details, it's got the discount percentage in there. So when, let's say we entered in a particular product and we invoiced a customer for 1,000 of them, and it had the discount, we had the discount percentage in there, we made a mistake, we needed to change that to 100. So we've changed it to 100. What we want to do is we want to maintain that discount percentage. We want to retain it. In some instances, you may want to retain it, depending on the type of industry that you're in. In others, you may not. Okay, so that's where you can turn that on. If you were using customer special pricing, you would not turn that on, because customer special pricing enables you to have the unique discount, okay, for that particular customer. So you wouldn't turn it on for the actual customer special pricing. Okay, the other one that I wanted to talk about, and I'll do the other one in products, consolidating your orders. So this one down here. It doesn't work for everybody, okay? It doesn't work for every business. But if you have a client that rings you 2 or 3 times a day, or even maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and you enter in the order for that customer, and then you go in at the end of the week and you convert that order into an invoice, and you send the invoice out. If you've entered in 3 orders for the customer and you've converted it, the customer's going to get 3 invoices, right? Because I'm a bit of a Nazi when it comes to debt collection, my biggest passion in the world, the customer could quite easily turn around and say, well, at the end of the month, things are a little bit tight. I'll only pay that 1, I'll only pay that 2, I'm going to leave that one. But if you consolidated those 3 orders into 1 invoice, the customer's only got the 1 invoice to pay. Okay. Now you can also, on the invoice itself, because I had somebody ask me, on the invoice you can display the original order number. So if the customer did ring with a query about that invoice, on the invoice screen it actually does show the original order number, if you choose to have it in your screen layout, which I'm going to show you when we go through screen layouts. Okay, so all these things, it's trying to think outside the box sometimes of why we put these things in the system. Yeah? Okay, the other one is the F2, F11. So this one here, where we've got enable output F11 in transaction entry. If I go into master files customers and I go inquire, one of the things that you may want is just a customer list of all your customers and their telephone numbers. So I don't want to print out a detailed list with everything. All I want is the customer name, and the telephone number. So when we get to customer inquiry, I can choose to F2 and then I go F11 and I get a wizard. Everybody knows about this wizard, don't they? Okay, there's always a couple that don't. Okay, so this wizard, it shows you or displays every single field on the master file, on the customer's master file. So it's not just the customer name and the customer telephone number that I might want. If I scroll across here, you'll see it's got all the fields that are on the master file, the territory, the discounts, the sales rep, the category, everything is there, even as much as all their sales. Okay, the default bank accounts that we're using for them, everything is on there. Okay, so at this point now, if I wanted to know what all the customers that had a balance in period 3, and I'm just going to take the code and the name, and I want the phone number because I need to call them, Now all I need to do is go next, next, and finish. And there's my list. And now I can drop that list into Excel. Okay, now this is available to you even if you have accounts. This isn't just a BI thing. Okay, so now I can drop that in Excel, I can email it to somebody, I can print it, I can do with it what I need. So that F2, F11 is available on the master file for customers, products, and suppliers. Okay, so it's on inquiry though. So if I go back to my options, the reason I raise that is because here we have, do you want all employees to be able to do that? If there were certain employees that you didn't want to be able to do that, then you would come in here and you would change their level. Okay, so again, if I put level 4 in there, that would mean only employees that had level 4, 3, 2 or 1 would be able to print that out. Okay? Has anybody here used it? Yeah? Okay. Consultants don't count, because if the consultants weren't using it or didn't know about it, I'd be a little bit worried. Okay. So that's a new thing that's there as well. All right, so that's the invoicing options. If we look at the other options really refer to our recurring transactions. Okay, so if you're setting up kits, preferred product lists and those sorts of things, these options refer to those. So if you're looking at stock, for example, do you want to allow the alternatives? Do you want to be able to, this combining the products and the services, I might talk about now as well. So when those of you that only use products, who only have stock, then the combination doesn't really matter. What we're talking about here is if I go into Master Files, Products, and I'm sitting on my Products tab and I go Inquire, when I click on the F2 button, you'll see here I have AMP, Bank, I've got blenders, so I have services combined with my products. So it's turning that off to say no, when I look up my products, I only want to see products. If I want my services, then I would just go straight into services and I do my services. Okay, so that's what that field is about. Now, what you will see is that if I go into my invoicing options, I actually have it here. So what is that telling me? If I tick that there, what's that telling me? When I enter in an invoice, I want to combine the two. Okay. On the other field, if I page down to the other options, and I'm telling you this because you will turn it on somewhere, not the other options, not those ones. If I turn it on here, I've turned it on there, sorry. If I then go into my invoicing options, other options, which is where I was. If I combine it here, that means I'm saying when I enter in any quotes or kits or anything like that and I do my F2 on my products, it'll combine the products and the services there. So you can turn it on and off in different places. So the reason I'm highlighting that is because you might come to enter in a quote and you think that you're only going to see the products, but you actually see both. And that'll be because we haven't turned it on or off here. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. Alrighty, so from there now we're just going to go in and have a look at the product options. So I'm just going to escape out of those and we'll look at the product options. Now in the product options, there's a couple of things that I want to highlight. The first one is the number of selling prices. Okay, there's up to 6 selling prices that you can have within Attaché. And I raise this because I have actually been out to 2 sites and one of them, it was very disappointing because the operator that was there had left and a new operator had come in, and she was told that you couldn't have anything except 2 selling prices in Attaché. That was all Attaché allowed you to have. Okay, when in actual fact you can have up to 6 on any product, but you also have your customer special pricing. And your customer special pricing basically allows every single customer to buy every single product at a different price, if you so need it to. Okay? The customer special pricing also isn't just about price, it's about discount as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean that a customer is going to get a product at a particular price. It might be that you're going to give them a particular discount. Okay? And customer special pricing also includes quantity breaks. So if a customer buys 1 to 10, they get this discount. If they buy 11 to 20, they get this discount. Okay? So they're the 6 standard selling prices that you can set up, and then you have your customer special pricing as well. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was validating the stock units. So when you're entering in your system, if you are dealing in kilometres, a particular product is each, or another one is litres, it will then actually validate the unit of measure that you're keying in there, okay, if you turn that on, so that you're not putting in the wrong one. Okay, the other one is the quantity reordered and the quantity minimum maximum. So you can have one of 2 options here. You can have the quantity level, or you can have the minimum maximum. So the difference between these is, if you choose the quantity level, on your stock items, you can say, if the level gets to 5, or under, but 5, I need to order 50. So as soon as you get to 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, or 5, the reorder report, if you print the reorder report, because there is one there, based on these figures, it will tell you that you need to reorder 50. If you choose minimum and maximum, so if we choose minimum maximum, that you may specify on the master file that the minimum stock quantity you want to hold is 5 and the maximum is 50. When you get to 5, it will tell you to order 45, because the maximum you ever want to hold is 50. Okay, so, and that you can obviously have different quantities, different levels on each stock item, but it's just choosing which method you want to hold. Okay, alrighty. The next one, if we go to other options, this is where you specify the naming or the headings for your 6 selling prices. So you can see I only had 2, and I've set them up as retail and dealer. Okay, or retail, wholesale, whatever you need them to be. The other thing that we have here is the discount categories, and I'm going to explain those in a minute. Oh, actually, I'll do those now. These options here, the bill and kit, that's only in BI, because Attaché BI has bill of materials. Okay, so that relates to the bill of materials side of BI. The discount categories is really interesting, because Attaché actually has 3 areas where you can put your discount in. The first one in is on the customer master file. So you can specify a customer gets 5% discount or 3% or 10%, whatever it is, on everything that they buy. The discount categories here, the example that I use is a hardware store. So discount 1 might be the builder. Discount 2 might be the carpenter. So when you add a customer and they're a builder, you would give them the discount category builder. If they're a carpenter, you would give them carpenter. When you add the product, when you add a product, you can actually specify a discount percentage on the product master file for a builder or a carpenter. So you might say product ABC, if the builder buys it, they get 5%. If the carpenter buys it, they get 10%. Anybody else gets nothing. So if I, as a builder, come in and buy that product ABC, as a builder, I'm going to be entitled to 5% discount. Okay, so this is where you can split people up within, customers within your organisation, grouping them together to be able to get specific discounts. And again, it's stopping you or the operator from having to remember what those discounts were all about, or who they are, what they're entitled to. Okay. So that's the discount. That's the second discount rate that we have, and the third one is in customer special pricing, which we've already spoken about. Okay, I'm watching you all very intently. You all need to chill. Okay, dimensions. Product dimensions. A new it was introduced into the software probably 3 years ago now. The dimensions to be able to add a dimension onto a product does 2 things. It can save you freight, okay? Because if you've got the dimensions, the weight, whether it be the weight, the height, the width, whatever, if I use the example of the weight, if you put the weight on a product master file, when you enter in the order, it will actually add all that weight up and tell you what the total weight of that order is. So if you're dealing with multiple freight companies, or like at Attaché, we've got a 2 kilo bag, a 5 kilo bag, it helps you then determine which piece of freight or which freighting company you should be using to help you save some money. Okay. Also, on buying, similarly, exactly the same. On a purchase order, it can put the total amount of weight or the width, the length, so that you know the container size or which particular freighting company you should be using. Okay. So every product can have its own. So you set your dimensions up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then you add those onto the product. Obviously then, if you wanted that to be added onto your invoice or your order, you would need to come in and then add that on your screen layout for your orders or your invoices, and then if you wanted to print it as well on your invoices, putting it on the print layouts. Okay, and then the other one is the custom fields. So I already mentioned this one. This is here where we've got, last price review was made on, was based on the cost, the review date, etc. So that's what you would key in on the master file. So that's looking at some of the product options. Let me just quickly check to make sure that we've covered all of them. We're going to have a look now at the supplier options. So if we look at the supplier options, we've got the period headings, which for your aging, that's if you're doing period-based, if you're doing your end of periods. Then down here we have our due date options on when we're paying. Okay, so this is just the default that you can set up so that when you're entering in your supplier invoices, you can specify what the actual due date is for that particular supplier. So it means that different suppliers you could be paying at different times. The other thing that I wanted to show you on the suppliers is I'm just going to page down. That's to do with all your date-based aging. We've got the custom fields as well. Okay, so exactly the same as the customers and the products. On the purchasing options, this is if you're running your purchase orders, doing requisitions and purchase orders. A couple of things to point out here. The first one is the default buying price. So if you're entering in a requisition or a purchase order, what price do you want to see? Do you want to see the last cost of that product, or do you want it to be zero? So if you're entering in a purchase order, it would be very handy, I would imagine, but again, it depends on the industry that you're in, when you enter in the purchase order for a particular product, that the last cost comes up so that you can compare that with what the supplier is actually charging you right now as well. Okay, so I would hasten to say that that would be a better option than having it at zero, but you would know that talking to your consultant and depending on the type of industry that you're in. Okay, if I page down again, that's really the main one that's on there that I wanted to highlight. If we page down, the one that we've got on here is using the default document folder or the linked supplier information. Does anybody use the linked information on the customers, the products, or the suppliers? No? Not quite sure what it is? No? No? Okay, I'll show you what that is. And the default document folder. When you are entering in an invoice for a supplier or an order for a customer, you have the ability to be able to attach the source document. Okay? So you receive an email from Attaché, our invoice from Attaché, we email to you. You can actually save that in a folder called Attaché. And then when you come in to enter in the supplier invoice in the Attaché system, you can tell it to go and link it to that source document, the email that we sent you. So that if there is any queries or questions, you can go into the supplier, you can go F5 transactions, you drill down, and it actually shows you the source document as well. So what I've done in here on my system, if I have a look at the supplier, we will go into transactions, suppliers, sorry, not transactions, my apologies, master files, suppliers, and we'll go into inquire. And if I search on Lind, cleaning, if I go F5 transactions, in September, if I open up the September invoice, you will see here on my screen layout, I have source document. Okay, so at any time, I've clicked on that field. If I go open link, it now opens up that source document for me. Okay, now that's available. Okay, you link it because, by way of, I will show you. I have a folder. Now this comes back to how you guys want to, sorry, I need to repeat the question because of the streaming. Sorry guys. The question was, how did I actually link that transaction, that document? On my C drive, I just happen to have a folder called suppliers. And in there I have Dawson, Lind, Naylor, Ross. So if I open up Lind, there's the transaction. So when Attaché emails you the invoice, you save that attachment in a folder called Suppliers Attaché or Suppliers, what month are we? October 2015, okay? And then when you come to enter in the invoice, the supplier invoice, on the actual screen itself, so if I go into Transactions, Suppliers, and we go into Invoices, Create, I think I have the source document there. So if I was to do that Lind one again, just as an example, I put in my invoice number. We won't worry about the reference and that. So when I get to the source document here, oops, I can actually come in here, yep, and I can search for it, right? And it's opened it up. Now that, no, can be a Word document, it can be, oh, sorry, does it have to be a certain type of document? That's all right. No, please ask the questions. No, it doesn't have to be a certain type of document. So it can be a PDF, it can be a Word document. You scan them in, so you scan them in, it can be one of those documents as well, okay? So the reason that I raise this here, I'm just going to cancel that because it'll, the reason I raise this is because under those setups, in the purchasing setups, thank you. In the purchasing setups, if you choose the default folder here, you can put in C:\suppliers, right? And it will always go to that folder. So instead of having to go and search for it each time, it will then pick up that folder, okay? Can you add multiple documents was the question? Yes, you can. Okay, so there's no limit because in that folder that you have, you can put in anything. And this is what I say to people, and I'm going to show you something else in a moment as well to do with the linked information. So what I'm saying here is you could have, from a customer's perspective, their contracts in suppliers. You could have your contracts with Lind, you know, your purchasing contracts and things like that. All that information can be saved in that folder.
So it has to be from one folder, not from multiple folders?
No, well, you could open one folder and then drill down. When it opens that folder, you could then drill down into another folder. So if you wanted all the contract information, you could have suppliers Lind, and most of it's going into there. But then if you have another folder in that, you could open it up and attach it to in there, okay? So, because it'll open up that source area for you. The other thing that I wanted to say, what was the other thing I wanted to say, Marianne, train of thought? When you come to, I'll show you in the linked information, it'll be easier and I won't forget. So that's one way of attaching source documents. So again, like I said, that's suppliers, and even if your customers email you orders, right? You could be saving those orders and attaching the orders to the invoices that you're entering into the system. So you've got everything at your fingertips and away with all the filing cabinets. Okay, in regards to the linked information, if I go to Master Files, Suppliers, and we go into Maintain, if I call a supplier up, and I'll do Lind, it doesn't really matter, you can see here, I've said, it actually says website/linked information, because in actual fact you could put a website in there as well and open up that website, and that might be because you I don't know, process purchase orders through their website, or you need to check some prices or something like that. So you could actually have their website in there, or you have that folder, or it could be a different folder. So I could actually have in here, if I wanted to, it doesn't have to be where my documents go. I can just have that as suppliers and just save that. Okay, so we just accept that. So the next time I come into Linde, L-I-N-D-E, when I come into them, you can see that it's just suppliers. So if I launch it, it will just now take me to suppliers, and now I open up Linde and I can go and have a look. Okay? Now, the point I wanted to make here is, when you go back to the office, are you all listening? Okay? Because this is the question that comes back after these sessions. So when you go back to the office, you try to do this. And it won't accept a folder. It wants an individual document. Okay? So what you need to do, did you have to take that photo? What you have to do is you have to Control F2. It's a Windows function, if you like, where Windows says to you, do you want to attach an individual document or do you want to attach a folder? So if it's coming up and wanting you to take a PDF, actually accept a PDF, then you know I have to go back, Control F2, and then you can go and pick the folder. Okay? Alrighty. I like the questions. Yes, sorry.
In that field, website linked information, can you have both? Can you have a website and linked information?
Okay, the question was, in this field here, could you have both the linked information and the website? And the answer to that is no. It's a long question for a little answer. But no,
If you put your linked information in there, where do you put your website?
well, your website you could put in the comment line up here. The only thing with that is that it wouldn't launch the website for you, okay? But there are other things that you can do. You may or may not have noticed, and this is just with BI. If I close all these down, I have the NAB bank there. I have Attaché software there. I have online there. So within your desktop, you can have unlimited number of tabs, and they can actually link to different websites. So if you're doing your banking and all those sorts of things, they can all be there as well. Yeah. Okay. The next thing I wanted to have a look at, or I wanted to show you, because we talked about the passwords, the levels and things like that, I want to go in very quickly and have a look at the user preferences. Okay. So under File, and this relates to both BI and accounts, you have user preferences. So when I choose the actual preferences themselves, I have the ability to be, actually what I'll do is I won't do it on there. We will go File, Maintain Users. We'll do it there, and you'll see it'll come down to that second page as well. So under Maintaining the User, once you put in the user's name, this is where you specify the actual password level. Okay, so under Maintaining the Users, this is where we specify their password levels, okay, of what we want them to have. And then that relates back to all those options that we saw in the setups. Do they require a password? This is a question that comes up. I want to set people up with the password. Where do I turn it on? So under Maintaining the Users, you specify whether they require a password at the time of entry, yes or no. Some users might, some users might not. Okay? So there's different options down here. Can they maintain companies? Can they do a restore from an archive? You know, do you permit them to do that sort of thing? Then over here, syncing with their Windows. So I go into my system, and when I log in the morning, I have my Windows login first, and then I have my Attaché login. So do you want to sync them so that you don't have to do both? Okay, so there's different options in here that you can set up. The default company menu access, and I'm going to show you the menu access in a moment. Do you want to give them none, full, or do you want to copy the menu access from other operators? So instead of having to go through and set this one up from scratch, I want to copy them from somebody else, and I'll show you that in a moment. And then down here, this is the important one, allowing the system checks your dates when you're entering in your transactions. So when you enter in, and the perfect example is when you go from 2015 to 2016, and people enter in an invoice in January and they still 0.15, or February and they still put 15. So you can come in here and specify the number of days, and it actually goes backwards as well, okay? So, and again, this is based per operator, okay? So each operator can have his or her own. Okay. Then we have their options for their different colours, okay, and different things like that. So everything to do with the operator is in here. If I page down, this is where we have all our preferences. So what type of menus do you want to use? So you've seen mine. I have the tab and I have all the function keys. Old school, mature aged operator. Don't like those icons at the top and the drop-down fancy things. I can never work that out. Ratishka uses those, so you'll get to see both when she presents a little bit later on. So yeah, so you can each operator can choose his or her own menu functions as well. And then there are other preferences here in regards to the fonts and even some colours. Or this one's the good one, enter the year in 4 digits. You have some people that like to enter 2014, 2015, and others that just want to enter the 15. So you can set that information up in there. Okay, so the user preferences are really important. Now, when we talk about menu access, one other thing that I want to point out here is if I cancel that, when I did a search, you saw I had one that was red. That's because it's a profile. It's a profile. So what I've done is I've created a profile called sales, and I've put in all the defaults that I want. So now I can copy, if I've got another sales rep that comes on board, I can copy that profile to that sales rep without having to go through and do it all individually. So the profiles, you tick it as a profile and it highlights it as a different colour as well. Okay? All right. The only other thing I wanted to show you, can you ask me the question at the end, but don't forget it, okay? And for all those people that are online, I know that you may be entering in questions as well, but there's over 200 of you out there, so we're not going to be able to get to answer all your questions, but they will be documented. Some of them, if we have time, we will ask at the end, but they will be documented and we will be answering them via online. Okay. So what I wanted to show you quickly before we move into the next section is under setups, company, you have menu access, okay, menu access rights. This is where you come in and you set up what access rights employees have. So if I choose MAS, this is where you can copy the menu access rights from one operator to another one, or you can modify them or modify individual ones. So if I wanted to modify Marianne's, well, Maz is Marianne, sorry, that's what they call me. So here, I've got all the menus. You get the menu bar. So if I didn't want an operator to actually have any access to customers, I would come into customers and I would say I want to hide the tabs. And now they don't see any. Okay? So hiding them, displaying them, you're going through each one of the menu bars and you're selecting what you want them to see, what you don't want them to see. So this is important too, because you may get an operator who's new that comes in and says, I can't do this, and that will be, but you can, and that will be why, because their menu access rights will be different. So that's under setups company, okay? Alrighty. Now what was that last question?
In the user maintenance screen, your date checking options.
Yes.
We've set ours to 30 days because we're on date system. We've got to keep all our invoices dated this month. But we have one supplier whose due date for the invoice is like 35 days after the end of month of the invoice date. So if you've got a September invoice, it's not due until the 5th of November.
Okay, sorry. I won't cut you off, okay? I am cutting you off, only because it's a really long question. Okay, so what we need to do is in the break, come up and see me, and we'll go through that one, yeah, okay? Because it's more unique to yourself. Okay, all right, I've just been giving the wrap up here, so what we'll do is, that's the end of the first session on the setup. So now we have a 10-minute break before we come back to the next section. So Ratishka and I are here. Some of the consultants are here as well. So if you've got any questions, feel free to come back to us. Okay, thank you.